So the last 2 days, we had the format where after the opening table, I would come up and basically give a lecture for half an hour, and then the entrepreneurs would come and speak. But yesterday, as I was listening to the entrepreneurs, I realized two things. The first thing I realized is that in some ways, I am here to learn, not just to talk. And in many ways, most of you are either teaching on effectuation, researching effectuation, or even if you have never heard of it, you are practicing it as entrepreneurs. And so I thought if I listen to the entrepreneurs first, and then derive something from that and talk and connect it to my research, that would be useful. And that is why I requested and told Aline, let us actually flip that today. But I do want to say a couple of words just to introduce myself so that if you have anything that you want to ask ahead of time, we can do that. But I also want to make sure we get enough time with the entrepreneurs that we have scheduled as well. But before I begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge, shout out Isabella, Rose, and where is Patty? Patty, yes, we have been comrades in arms along with Aline throughout the pandemic. Every Friday we have a conversation together, and we have never met each other in person, except Rose I did meet. And so it's just exciting to just see somebody that you have already fallen in love with, and you see them for the first time in person. So I just want to acknowledge their presence here. And Patty is actually coming from Bolivia, so welcome, I can say welcome to Brazil. Now, a very quick introduction to my background for those of you who have not already heard it. I was born and raised in Mumbai, and growing up, just being able to go to college was a dream because nobody in my family had been to college. But having been to college, as part of the process, I got inspired by the story of Jamshedji Tata, one of the enduring set of companies built by the original founder, Jamshedji Tata. And so naturally, as a young person, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become an entrepreneur. So my first identities as an entrepreneur, I've co-founded 5 ventures. I have done businesses in Germany, India, and Singapore before coming into academia, because I realized that in some ways entrepreneurship is powerful. In fact, I think of entrepreneurship as a social technology to build better worlds in some ways. And some of that just came from doing entrepreneurship, the practice. But there was also the puzzle as to why we are not teaching entrepreneurship. And over the years, coming into academia and doing research, not only has it been possible to sort of spell out some of the things that we should be teaching entrepreneurs, but the bigger insight over the last 20 years of research, working with hundreds of researchers around the world, educators around the world, who are not only teaching effectuation, but also building teaching materials that are local and in local languages. One of the insights that has come is this idea that we need to think about entrepreneurship the way we thought about science, right? In the 17th, 18th century, when Francis Bacon wrote the book Novum Organum, where he argued that that is a method to science, right? It is not just some rich people collecting data or some geniuses who can read the science of nature, right? They actually said there is a method here. And then what did we do? We actually decided to teach it to everybody. Anybody who has access to school gets some education in science. We are not teaching science only to future scientists, right? And there is a good reason that that is a useful way to think about entrepreneurship, because if you want to build entrepreneurs, you have to build the soil first. So I'm very glad to see all the people in the opening table who are supportive of this, that people talk about ecosystems, but I actually think it's more than that. It's more basic than that. And by teaching entrepreneurship to everybody, we then create a society that is capable of not only producing good entrepreneurs, but actually nurturing them and taking care of them when things go wrong, things like that. So we need people around who need to understand. So that's one insight. Another insight that I wanted to share very quickly with especially people in the on the stage during the opening table, some of the recent work that I've been doing is really showing how by teaching entrepreneurship to everybody, like as a method, right? Like the scientific method, by teaching entrepreneurship as a method, we can actually build a middle class of business. Right now, the world looks like a lot of public money is supporting startup entrepreneurs, right? Very early stage, seed stage, micro, just people who are starting companies. And private money, of course, chases the unicorns, right? The companies that are likely to become the next Google or Airbnb or whatever. So, but in the middle, there is very little. And so if you look at the history of science education, you see one of the results of science education is that we have a middle class in the labor market. But I think by teaching entrepreneurship and researching entrepreneurship and building entrepreneurship in this way, where you are like teaching everybody, not just future entrepreneurs, we can end up building the middle class of business. So over the last 7 years, a lot of my work has been with people, and my own work is looking at how do we do that? What do we teach in the first grade, in the second grade? What do we teach to the partners of entrepreneurs? What do we teach to the family of people? What do we teach to the bosses where people are working today, but they can be entrepreneurial? So it's really looking into the details of how entrepreneurs talk with other people, the other stakeholders, looking at that, and then working out the connection to the middle class of business. So this is just a little bit of my background and where my research has been at. And hopefully we'll get a little bit of time to introduce effectuation today for those of you who may not know but want to understand. And then we have a master class at the end of the day tomorrow for 90 minutes when I get to just simply teach. But for the moment, I want to be in learning mode and connect to the entrepreneurs here in the room. But before I invite the entrepreneurs, let me just ask one question. Are there any questions right away that you would like to ask me, just based on what I said in the last few minutes? I always like to give opportunities for people to ask questions and not just talk.
A minha pergunta do Bruno é sobre... Você acabou de falar sobre como incentivar, que uma das suas áreas de pesquisa hoje é a preocupação de incentivar e nutrir esse middle class, essa classe média. Você podia, can you just talk a little bit about that? Só pouquinho mais sobre isso, por favor.
So the idea is not to incentivize the middle class of business. The idea is to teach entrepreneurship in such a way that people end up building companies that will last for a long time, but they're larger than just one or two people, right? So the idea is, how do we teach in such a way that that is the result of that, okay? So it's not a question of incentivizing anybody. And so the way we started the project was to look at 250 small business owners around the US. And this is just one study. We have a total of 3 studies. The first one was in the US. And we asked them every day to call in 5 minutes a day for 60 days in a row and tell us about the relationships that they're trying to build to grow their business. So we were not interested in what is the product and what is the cost. We were saying, who are you meeting? What are you asking them? How are you asking them? Who are the people you would like to meet and ask? And if you're not asking, why are you not asking? And if you did ask somebody, if you did meet somebody, what happened? So really the unit of analysis, what we are trying to understand is something very simple, the ask. Right? So we are here in this room, so one of the entrepreneurs may sit next to somebody. Okay, Patty from Bolivia. They may not know anybody or work with anybody, but then all of a sudden, and you did not plan to meet her, but she is here. And the question is, how do you talk? And are there certain ways of talking that lead to more productive relationships? And what can we teach? So it's at that level of teaching, but we showed that just by teaching people to ask, they are able to grow their company, because a lot of the time, they don't know how to approach somebody and ask. That's one of the reasons they don't do it. And then we also have a whole series of ways of asking that we can teach. And then when you teach them to ask effectually, and that's when they are able to open like big doors. And so that's the short version of the study. We then followed it up with a study of Inc. 500 companies. And then literally, I think now about 6,000 entrepreneurs from India and Asia. Also, we have experimented. So we have 3 different studies. The first one, experience sampling. The second one, in-depth interviews with high-growth entrepreneurs. And the third one is a series of experiments just to show that this works, right? Yeah. Yes.
Based on that, so you develop a method or no with this study that you are doing?
Basically, what we have done with that data is fleshing out the details of effectuation, right? So initially, you're teaching effectuation as the 5 principles and the process. But now you can talk about in every conversation, how do you talk like a visionary? How do you talk causally? How do you talk adaptively? And how do you talk effectually? So we connected to the prediction control 2 by 2. And hopefully I will present a little bit more a little bit later. But I want to hear from the entrepreneurs first. So let's go to the entrepreneurs, all right?